Welcome to the Studio Session Podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Varnell. Today, our special guest is Brytin Ayers. Brytin graduated in 2024 from Utah Valley University, where she gained a strong foundation in classical and traditional architecture. Brytin also survived architecture school while being a mother of 3 children, and she exemplified hard work and diligence as well as kindness. I'm honored to have her on this podcast and for you to learn about her educational journey. Let me take a moment to introduce you a little bit more. While at Utah Valley University as a mother of 3 children, Brytin completed an internship at Tetrad Architecture and Planning, where she contributed to a project with the Springville Museum of Art in Utah, gaining experience with project management, construction documents, and client collaboration. Her work on that project was particularly noteworthy as it emphasized her commitment to designing healing spaces and community-centered design. This led her to her work on her ambitious vision to combine her historic preservation and spiritual space experience on a project called the Warm Springs Bathhouse in Salt Lake City, which was a remodel of the historic bathhouse, which has sat vacant for many years. Now she works at Edifice, and Brytin aims to contribute to a more walkable community and oriented cities with a particular interest in urban design and planning. Brytin emphasizes the importance of strong support systems in time management and defining personal success in this podcast, offering valuable insights for other students managing multiple life roles while pursuing architectural education. Enjoy.
Am I going to wish that I had suffered through school, or am I going to wish that I'd held my little baby in my arms? And I was like, that's what I want. I was going up to one of our last studio presentations. I had all my art stuff in the car, and I got in a car accident on the way up, and I was pregnant. You've got to learn to ask for help if you don't feel comfortable doing that. I have these 2 values. I have family and I have architecture. Those are like my 2 sides. I feel like I need both. Like, you can't split the coin in half, right? I didn't know that I was so stubborn and so determined. And I didn't know that I would love it this much. When you notice yourself getting angry at your project, you're too far.
Brytin, why architecture?
I think little old me just really wanted the world to not be boring. Because I saw a lot of the things around me, mostly my house, just like, well, and we grew up on media and like lots of TV shows and stuff, and I played Mario games a lot growing up, so I was like, the world could be so fun, and our world looks like squares and rectangles and like ugly like McMansions, so I was like, there must be something to do about this. So I just was like, picture Belle singing "There Must Be More to This Provincial Life." That was me. Okay. And so I decided that if I can't have the home that I want right now, then I will be the person who can do that in the future. So I was like, what is that? And I don't remember who told me about it, or it was probably a Google search, but I was like, who makes homes and how do they do it? And I was like, oh, like an architect. So I was like, whoa, that's cool. And then I learned about floor plans and just started looking at those and printing those out. And they were all squares and rectangles, but I was like, this is how I get there. Okay. And I would look a lot at really organic architecture too, like mushroom houses and shell houses. So it was the way to make the world a little more fun. And I just really wanted that. So, but now obviously it's evolved, because I'm not a child anymore. I mean, I still am inside. And I will get that mushroom house still. I owe it to little me. But now it's turned into let me backtrack, because I always knew I wanted to be an architect. And so I was like, I need to do schooling, and then I'll get my hours and work. I knew about that. And so going through elementary school and high school was a slog, because I was like, I just want to get to college where I can actually learn what I want to do. And I loved art, and I was very, very curious. I did really like science. I just wasn't very good at the math part of science. But I pushed through because I had ideals and I would achieve the goal no matter what.
Yeah.
just a very determined person for things that I want. And then I remember in high school just being so upset, like having to like do, not that I was upset that I was learning, but it was like, I wish I could start now. I just wanted to start now. So I've just spent my whole life waiting just to be in architecture school. And so finally, when I graduated high school, I was like, yep, the plan's to go to Salt Lake Community College. And I saved up and I worked for a year and then started at Salt Lake Community College in their architecture program. And I was like, yay, I'm here. This is it. And I was just happy to be there. And I learned so much. And it was all very modern. Well, I guess when I say I learned so much, it was more like I experienced so much.
Okay.
And I got to put my creative abilities into practice, which was very refreshing.
Right.
And so I was like, yeah, this is really cool. But it was all very abstract still. And then I heard from one of my professors that they're starting architecture program down in UVU, which is great because I did want to go to UVU after high school, but they didn't have a program. And I didn't want to just be a drafts person at that time. It was like 2015. Mm-hmm. So back to UVU, I go, I meet David, and they're like, we're going to teach like traditional principles here. And I was like, whoa, what's that? Like there's form and order to things. And I was like, this is the place where I want to be. And David was like, yeah, apply the program, it would be great. I'm telling everything very chronologically, but this all has to do with why architecture, because it was the thing that just lit my, like, got me fired up. And not a lot of people have that when they get to college. And I was honestly surprised at this point that I was still interested because I'm kind of the personality type where I'm like, I'm over here and I'm over there and I'm over, but like architecture was just the one constant in my life. And it just stayed that way.
Why is that?
It's the perfect blend of art and science. And everything I learned at UVU actually reinforced that.
Yeah.
And it's a way to order our world and our living spaces. And it just reinforced this ideal that like, yeah, our physical spaces can impact our lives. And it does. So everything that I wanted when I was younger was valid in a sense. Sometimes I felt like too much of an idealist where it's like, just accept the world as it is. And I'm glad I pushed against that because like things weren't like, oh, things have to be this way because it's cheap and things have to be this way because people need to make money. And there's a part of me that always felt resistant to that and was like, but there should be, like, beauty isn't like just a bonus.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. Yeah.
And so UVU was like, let me teach you all the things about the cosmos. And it's just, I don't know, it's the way that I want to sculpt the world. I always wanted to like have an impact. And if I can make other people feel in awe and in wonder of their own environment, like I wanted when I was a kid, I really want to give that to them. And being the architect is like how you do that, when you shape other people's world, basically. A giant egotistical person, I guess.
No, you're not. So Brighton is my classmate from when I went to UVU, and we joined in our class after you had your second child. Mm-hmm. And
2021 fall.
So you were in the first group of students to enter in the architecture program.
Yeah.
And that was with David Barker, you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And what were the other professors that were teaching there at the time?
So it was David and Marika. Mm-hmm. I don't remember her last name, but she was brought on to help us get on track for accreditation.
Right.
And also, like, David was very open-minded, so he's like, we'll temper like the traditional stuff, we'll have a modern side to things, because Marika was very, very modernist. Okay. She loves the UVU campus.
Yeah.
She's like, I love brutalism. So, like, I really liked her. I vibed with her. I understood where she was coming from, because I also had a modernist background.
Right.
And so the first studio where she's like, we're going to make chairs. I was like, yay. And everyone else who like already had jobs. Like as
Uh-huh.
drafts people were like, this is so stupid. And I was like, it is fun.
Yeah.
And then Brandon joined very soon after that.
Okay.
So those were the professors that I can remember.
Do you remember anything specific about why you chose UVU in the beginning?
Yeah, because, well, most importantly, it was close to home.
Oh, yeah.
But also, and it was more affordable.
Right.
And I was like, I just need to start working. I just want to work. I know I'll learn a lot in the field. And if UVU is taking a more practical approach, I've got like the abstract art stuff down. I started to realize my weaknesses. And I was like, I need to temper that so I can be more efficient and like just be more well-rounded, essentially. So I was like, UVU is the place where it's going to really challenge me.
Who connected you with David Marker originally?
Kevin King. They went to school together at the U back in the day.
And how did you meet Kevin?
So he was my studio professor at Slick,
okay,
which is Salt Lake Community College.
So did they recommend that to many students?
Yeah, like the last couple days of our last semester for our associates up there, he was like, good job, everybody. Just wanted to, give some news. One of my old colleagues from school started up a program down in Utah County if you guys want to explore that. If not, you're, on track to go to the U. It's been good to know you guys. Like,
right.
Let me know. I was also pregnant with my first at this point.
Right. Okay.
So I guess I just love being pregnant. I don't know.
We love being mother. That's one of the reasons.
Well, yeah, I think it's fun to be pregnant, but I also really have generally easy pregnancies. Anyway, so yeah, that's how he was my studio professor, and he knew David, and he was like, I think that'd be a really good option for you. Keep in mind, I had also a month or like 3 weeks prior to that day, I was going up to one of our last studio presentations. I had all my art stuff in the car, and I got in a car accident on the way up, and I was pregnant. I was like 20 weeks pregnant.
That's awful.
And it was kind of bad. I'm really like kind of lucky to be alive because it spun across the freeway.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, should I still go to school? And they were like, no, because I was like in shock, and I was like, my studio project.
Oh my. Anyway,
so then I kind of, told my professor, and he gave me like some leeway with some of the projects because Kevin King's a really good guy. Awesome. I had a really good experience at Slick.
So Brian, tell me where you work now.
I work at Edifice. It's great. It's like a hybrid. So I work mostly from home, and then some days a week I go up into the office in Bountiful. Mm-hmm. I got recruited by Chad because he was one of our jurors. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was like one of the jurors for a lot of our critiques and presentations, and he's also a classicist, so our values aligned, and he would talk to me about my projects sometimes. And then one day on LinkedIn, he was like, hey, would you be interested in working at Edifice? Yeah, I just had a baby, like probably not now, but maybe in like January. They're like, cool, sweet, let us know. Yeah. And then January comes, and I'm like, I don't have anyone to watch my baby. I probably can't work.
Yeah.
But I ended up starting in March, and it's just been so good. It's a great culture.
So I think that one of the things that makes you unique is that you are a mother, and you also had a lot of dedication throughout the whole experience at UVU in the architecture program. Mm-hmm. And I'd love for you to give advice to those that might be in a similar situation.
Well, my advice would be, like, how badly do you want it? Because the reason that I stayed dedicated to it, because it was like I made a promise to myself, and like I was going to do this, not at the detriment of my kids. And if at any point it was hurting my children, I would have stopped. But not without trying. So you got to set up so much support for you. You've got to learn to ask for help if you don't feel comfortable doing that. Mm-hmm. You got to have people who can help you, like have your lists, have your backups to the backups of people who can watch your kids. Because if you're a single mother, I wasn't a single mother, which makes it easier. But if you are a single mother, you just have to have so much support around the clock because you're everything and everywhere all the time. And it feels like a lot. But also, if you really want this is something you're investing for yourself, and that ultimately reflects well to your kids because you're showing them you respect yourself if this is something you truly want.
Yeah.
And you're showing them a determination. And, as long as they're safe and healthy and happy, like, and this is something you can do with support, then you can make it through. Like, you're going to miss your kids and it's going to be so hard. But also at the same time, in my experience, it made you way more present with my kids when I did have that time. Yeah. And when I took that time, I was so conscious, like, just kind of greedy with it. Like, oh, this is so perfect and precious, this moment where I'm not doing homework and I'm with my children. It made it so rich.
Yeah.
While also, like, keeping that word to myself where I said, I'm going to do this. And so there's no resentment and there's just, I don't know, lots of joy. But make sure you have lots of help. And you'll cry, and that's okay. Your kids might cry and they'll miss you. And if you go to UVU, I don't know who all the audience is here, but like UVU, the professors there are family-oriented people. And I was just always humbled and almost brought to tears by the kindness that I was shown by Paul, by Aliki, by Lee, by Brandon, David when he was there. Mm-hmm. They're not in that typical architecture modernist mode where it's like, you can't put your nose to the grindstone, you don't deserve to be here. Yeah. So have trust in them if you go to UVU that they respect you as a person and they want trust in your success in your school life and your home life. So build a system and network of support for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I saw that many times. Every studio that was going through the program had several students that we would consider non-traditional students. Yeah. And that there was an effort to make everybody welcome. Mm-hmm. And I feel like UVU has a special understanding of non-traditional students in general, not just the architecture program.
Yeah.
And I think COVID kind of showed that a lot as well, as their willingness to adapt their courses to non-traditional techniques, mm-hmm. like video calls and lots of emails and late night maybe sessions. I remember David Barker even offering once, heck, we'll meet in the park if we can't meet at school, if we need to meet in person. Mm-hmm. And they definitely go an extra mile for the students to accommodate the challenging circumstances everybody is in. And maybe that's because most of them are parents and they kind of understand what it's like to live a life that is full of multiple things pulling you different directions.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that.
Yeah. And just them to, like, if you ever need to bring your kids, it's totally okay.
Yeah.
Like, just them saying that was like, oh, like, wow, it was such a relief because that's not, like, nobody would do that at the U ever. Like, maybe at BYU, but
right.
But like specifically in architecture, that's just like not something you do.
Yeah, it's so definitely special. Not something you'd expect.
No.
So what kind of did you expect going in being a mother at UVU? Did you feel like you would receive all that, or did you kind of have to test the waters?
I didn't really care.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was just happy to be there. If they don't like this, I'm going to make it work. Like, I just have to appeal to their humanity.
Right.
Like, I feel like I can be pretty convincing. So I was like, I'll talk them into it if I have to. It kind of felt like at all costs. And by any means, by any ethical means. I don't know. If people were going to judge me, then I'm like, you're judging someone who's like trying to live out their dream. That's dumb. Don't do that.
How did you feel as a mother? Did you feel like you were different? And how did that affect you?
I did. Yeah. I just felt like I was also a really young mother. I still am. And so it also felt like a lot of people didn't know I had a kid because I didn't like bring it up and they didn't ask because I looked and was really young. And so like at school, I was kind of like just me. And then like it kind of, eventually it just comes up like, oh no, I gotta go pick up my kids. And they're like, you have kids? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, what the heck? And I was like, yeah, haha, funny. Anyway, like, let's work on this time. And like, kind of that was that. So with them, I didn't feel like so weird about it because like Hunter had kids too, someone else in the first cohort.
Right.
So it was like a better understanding. It was an older group. And they were like, chill. Another thing that I would say to anyone in the program that has kids and is a mother, because it's a little bit different if you're the mother, or it can be, set expectations with your partner about your workload. That will help you it kind of forces you to create a structure of like on times and off times, which other students don't really do, and it kind of leads to burnout. I'm not saying having kids in school is great, but it can be a nice structure. So rely on your partner, set expectations. And another thing is utilize your evening time after your kids are asleep. You're going to miss your partner, but that's the time to like go. So a lot of other people in our cohort who had kids, they would work from like 10 to 3 a.m. Because like in the mornings for me, my husband still worked. So I would kind of take the mornings shift and like get the kids ready, do their lunches, get them to the daycare, go to school, and then work a little. I had a partner who was more than willing, and we had the ability. He could go pick them up after he was done working, and he could feed them. He was very capable. Very much an equal partnership in that. So I'm very lucky in that regard. But yeah, just rely on your partner and utilize your nighttime because you're going to want to see your kids, and you should let yourself see your kids.
Do you feel like you would do it all over again if you went through architecture school?
Like, would I do it all the same?
Yeah.
Well, yes. Like the quality of the education I got, yes, every time. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad I took the break after being pregnant with Sabrina. I think that was a good call. And then I didn't take a break with Rhea, my youngest, who I was pregnant with in my second to last semester. I kind of just called the shots as is. Like, so if I had to go back, I don't know if I would do it differently though, because I wanted to be a young grandparent. I have these two values. I have family and I have architecture. And like, those are like my two sides. I feel like I need both. Like, you can't split the coin in half, right? Is what it felt like. And so it was a balancing act. I think maybe I could have started a little later. Like if I had started in a later cohort, then I could have gotten like learned more quality stuff. Because at the beginning it was like, what's going on here? Is it modern? Is it traditional?
Right.
And like
you
looking
were learning
back,
how they you were experiencing the growth of the program and their attempts at getting accreditation, as well as teachers, hiring teachers, not having enough teachers. It was a bit of a roller coaster.
Well, and a whiplash from going hyper modern, just making a wooden chair, to like Brandon Rowe being like, you're gonna make a classical facade for this building and it's gonna be perfect, and you're like,
wow.
So that whiplash. But if I had to do it all over again and I could change things, I think, no, I wouldn't do things differently. I want to be a young grandparent, and I wanted to start architecture school as soon as possible. And if I can make both work, and I did, then that was great.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about the kindness of people, and I learned a lot about like just myself and what I can go through and what my strengths are. And like, I didn't know that I was so stubborn and so determined.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I would love it this much. And it's it feels like a bond, you know, with architecture. So
That's special. I kind of resonate with that as well. I definitely found a lot about myself and the experience of kind of refining yourself in terms of making sure you have enough time in the day, kind of taking away the things that were holding me back.
Yeah.
It was definitely a refining experience that taught me that I was capable of a lot more than I thought I was.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't necessarily want to go through the refining fire most of the time, I knew it was coming, and I was, that's daunting. I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah.
It was kind of done in steps, though. Luckily, they kind of teach you in a way that prepares you for the next big thing.
Yeah.
And I struggled with the beginning.
Yeah.
The beginning was a shock.
Yeah.
Like the first assignment, first model build, the first many firsts.
Mm-hmm.
Those were always very stretching.
Yeah. Yeah. And going through COVID too was like,
right?
That's a totally unique experience that hopefully, you know, no one else has to experience, at least to such a severe degree.
Yeah.
Like hopefully we've learned something.
Hopefully.
Or at least like we've gone through this before. So it's like, okay, we know what to do. But like, yeah, that was one of the times where it was like, ooh, like maybe I shouldn't do this anymore when COVID hit, because I didn't have daycare.
Oh, yeah.
And I had an 18-month-old. And then I had a falling out with, because I had like it's daycare, but it was really someone in our ward watching her out of her house.
Okay.
It was kind of volatile. Like this was outside of COVID stuff, but like she was like, "You forgot the car seat today. I'm really like upset that this happened." Well, she was very angry with me, and I was on my way to school, and I parked in the parking lot just to read that text. Mm-hmm. And you know, when you pull up to school, you're always anxious. Like, do I have this thing? Do I like? What's my teacher gonna say? Is this done well enough? And then I get that text, and it's like, why am I doing this? Like, she's right. I should just be done. Like, I'm clearly incapable of like remembering to bring her a car seat. And what I found so frustrating is the second I left her house, why wasn't she like, "Hey, where's the car seat?" Mm-hmm. But it came like 15 minutes later when I arrived at school, and she was very angry. It's like this. Anyway, so that was one of those moments where I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But that's like unique to being the mother situation, where it's like, if I don't have daycare, how can I put out the work that I'm going to be proud of? That's what I was scared of. Mm-hmm. Like, if I can't put out work that I'm going to be proud of, like, is this worth it? And I was like, well, I do just want to graduate, and I am learning. And if I get a bad grade in this and still graduate, I think I can deal with that. So like, graduation still was ultimately the goal, even if sometimes you're not going to be happy with some projects. Yeah. So it's like, I'm still learning. Okay. But that was hard.
So you mentioned that being a mother kind of affected your success in what you were kind of learning was, you know, to kind of redefine what you felt like was successful in those times. Yeah. How did you go about doing that?
Just lots of rumination, late night up thinking. Yeah, you just reform what you value. And every day you're going to be like, what's worth it? What's worth my energy today? Mm-hmm. And like, what's enough? I just ask myself that all the time. What's enough? Mm-hmm. If I can get it to this point, will that be acceptable? Probably. And then also like checking with the studio teachers and them being like, you're doing good. Like, mm-hmm. If you keep going, like, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So their reassurance was really helpful. But your question was how do you decide what's like success, right?
Yeah. How do you define where you've done enough? And do you feel like you have advice for other people on how to define their success and evaluate if they're pushing themselves too far?
When you get angry, when you notice yourself getting angry at your project you're too far. So step back if you're starting to just that feeling. Everybody's felt anger before, then just reel it back a bit. Like you're pushing yourself too hard. And you're not going to put out good work when you're angry.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be proud of it anyway because you're so angry. And so if you kind of distance yourself from your project a little bit sometimes, because a lot of the time you feel like it's an extension of you.
Yeah.
And it represents you.
Right.
And it represents your abilities. And to a degree it does, but also at the same time it really doesn't. Like you will learn, like, I know I can do this if I took more time. Right now, I don't have more time to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to accept that because I'm getting pissed off right now and I need to move on. Yeah. And just be confident in yourself. Like, I know I'm capable of more than this. And I know Paul or whoever is going to be like, and I just have to accept that at this point to protect my inner peace. So a lot of it is just intuitive and learning. Pay attention to your body, pay attention to your emotions, and just step outside of yourself sometimes. And like, if you could watch yourself in this moment, what would you tell yourself? And if it's like, please get some sleep, then do that.
Right.
So just like, a lot of it is intuitive. Take time to not be in your head so much. And I mean, you're successful if you graduate, and you're successful if you make it and you live.
Yeah.
Right? And if you have at least one project you're proud of, cool. Or if you're proud of your development, like I had to tell myself, like, I have kids and I'm doing this.
Yeah.
They don't have kids and they're doing that. Like you just have to compartmentalize things because everyone's trying really hard.
Yeah.
And effort really is valuable. And recognize when you're spinning your wheels and move on to something else. But I don't know. Does that really answer the question?
That's super valuable advice. If someone told me that while I was going through school, that would have been really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how to answer the like successful question because it's like, it's really personal.
It is very personal. And I think that if you end up not graduating or turning away from architecture, then you need to evaluate, like, and sit down with yourself and be honest about, I'm still a good person.
Yes.
And like, just because I'm not an architect or just because I didn't measure up to what other people did, then I'm still a good person.
Yes.
And the pain can come, a lot of pain and judgment of yourself can come from when you compare yourself to other people.
Oh, yeah.
And the faster you can learn not to do that, the faster you will be way more at peace with yourself and your project. And instead look at it as a way of learning from other people. When you notice the things that are maybe more refined than what your work is. And that's why I liked what you said about recognizing that you can potentially do better than what you've done, and that you have the skills to do that if you just had the time. And that's really important.
Yes. Yeah. I also thought that, like, if someone, like, successful is determined based on what you value. Have you achieved what you value? And if you maybe drop out of the program and you say, maybe I'll try again because I still value this, then that's not a failure because you're wanting to try again, which is still good. You just need a break, and that's okay too. I was thinking when I decided to take a break with my second, I started to feel like, now I'm all behind and like I'm not good enough. The comparing.
Yeah.
That's when you start to fail because you aren't confident anymore, and it keeps you from acting on things that you should. But like, what made this successful is that I came back to it because I value it. So success and values are directly connected. you're only as successful as you are in line with your values.
Right.
Because have I achieved the goal that I wanted to? And if the answer is no, it's like, well, did my values change? Did I learn? Something changed, and to value that, and it's a redirection, not a failure, rather than, it's a different way to a different success.
Absolutely.
So another thing that I would do differently is not necessarily not having kids, but mostly just taking the time to realize why I wasn't working as efficiently as everyone else, because there actually was like a difference there. And actually I had David Barker come tell me, like, it's just time management. And I remember when he told me that, I was like, I feel like I'm trying so hard to manage my time and it's not enough. I wish that at that moment I had remembered that, like, hello, like, your dad has ADHD and maybe you should go see if you have it.
Oh.
Because you struggle so much. And I struggled with math all the time. And even later, we had to take statics, right?
Yeah.
Barely got a C.
Right.
And some of that was me, and some of it was the first statics teacher was like, he didn't really know what he was doing anyway. But anyway, I just wish that I had more resources knowing about how to manage how I worked, because I didn't know that I was that way. I thought that I was just lazy. I thought that I was just unfocused. I thought that I just lacked sleep. I was going to therapy, and one therapist told me, "Oh, you're just depressed. You're just depressed." And I was like, that makes sense. Because I was.
Yeah.
But now, I got diagnosed this year in January, and it's like comorbidity. Like, well, yeah, you're depressed because you have undiagnosed ADHD and you can't manage your life. Like, you, especially as a woman, you don't, like, the diagnosis rate for women is way lower. Okay. So I wish that I had known what I was dealing with so I could better structure my time, try the medications, see if it worked.
Yeah.
I like the medications now, and it's changed my life. I'm like, is this what it's like to, like, do something you don't want to do? Like, you mean you can just sit there and, like, do it and, like, get it done? I didn't have that. And, like, it's helped me manage my home life too, which would have helped me get more homework done. And yeah, I wish that I had been diagnosed and medicated. Yeah. So if anyone has a suspicion that they might have that, definitely see your therapist, see a psychiatrist, explore it. No harm in trying, and they say no, great. It's better to not have it. Like, well, I shouldn't say that, because now I'm learning in, like, the ADHD world, they're like, you're just different. It's your strengths. You're so creative. And I'm like, yeah. But I can't function sometimes. Anyway, so I'd change that.
Do you know much about the resources we have on campus?
Well, yes.
Where you utilize those at all in terms of counseling? Well,
we had, once my husband got a better job, like, halfway through school, we had better, like, therapy through work. So I used that. That was free, basically.
Okay.
But yeah, I would definitely encourage people to see therapists on campus. I think it's still kind of, like, hard for women to get diagnosed in the general consensus, because you might just get diagnosed with depression. So if you're a female and you feel like you might have it, then definitely explore that more. If someone says, no, you're just depressed, you might want to look into it a little more.
I agree.
So
for anyone listening, you should know that there's 10 free therapy sessions offered to any student admitted to UVU. And those are completely free, and you can experiment with which counselor works best for you. But there's also many more resources for people going through financial situations that they need help with, and as well as attorneys ready to help you as well, which is something that people need to make use of, because you could be ending up spending a lot of money that you don't need to.
They also have WeCare, which is affordable daycare for anyone going to UVU. Yeah. It was great until they got full and they couldn't accommodate my architectural schedule, because they're used to, like, people in general is just trying to get, like, their MBA or whatever with kids. being in architecture school was a special nuance because they were like, what do you mean? Like, you have to be in class this late? Like, we're only open till 6. Although I guess the studio times are different now, but like,
Yeah.
they couldn't accommodate my schedule at the end. And so I had to scramble and find something else. But they were great until they got full.
And more affordable.
Yeah, they do a sliding scale, so they'll look at your finances.
Okay.
And I think at the most it's like $6 an hour per kid, which is really low for the average like rates, especially in Utah.
Sure.
So yeah, and they give you time to do homework too, which is nice. But it's like 3 hours a week.
Okay.
So for like an architecture student, that's like I could use that in a day.
Yeah. Yes.
Going back to like advice for mothers in architecture, utilize the time after your kids go to sleep.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
Good advice.
yeah.
So Brighton, let's talk about your capstone project. You're a graduated student now, graduated 2024, and you had a chance to work on what I think is one of the coolest capstone projects.
Thank you.
And how did you go about choosing it? What was your original goals, and how did that evolve?
So I feel like my capstone project was like, I don't know if I want to say divine intervention, but more of like fated. Like it was just fate. Like the things that came together, it fit so well with what I already wanted. So I started thinking about my capstone the semester before you start the capstone research. And I was talking to Brandon about it, and I was like, I really, really want, my impetus was like, I love going to the temple, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It brings me a lot of peace, and I love like the service we get to do there. I love, just the sanctuariness of it. And I was like, I want everyone to have this because I'm in an interfaith marriage now, and I have lots of friends who are no longer part of the church. And I'm like, there should be a place where they can still take their families that's sacred and peaceful. So I wanted like a temple for the masses,
right?
Essentially. A place where they could take their kids on Sundays if they were missing that but don't want to go to the LDS church anymore. So that was my original idea. And I was like, Brandon, what do you think about creating a sacred place? And he's like, well, I also really wanted it to be like a healing place. So like lots of plants. I had a dream. Sound like a visionary person. I mean, I am. Anyway. So I had a dream that I was like walking through this conservatory, and there were like pools and waters, and there were plants everywhere. It's like, this is so nice. And like, I wanted it to feel like you were going to a different world. So I was like, oh, there should be a bridge.
Yeah.
Some kind of removal from the mundane.
Right.
But still accessible to all. And I was like, oh, that'd be so cool. So I kind of drew out a little idea, and I told Paul about it. He's like, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And then the summer goes on, and I'm pregnant with my third, and I'm like, I am not going back to school. I had decided not to go. Oh,
really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes. So I'm like a leaky. Yes. It's true. So yeah. And then like, I don't know if Paul texted you, but like a week before school started, he's like, hey, like just wanted to hear your thoughts about capstone, what you're thinking.
Right. Yeah.
And he texted me and was like, and then he also texted me like, are you planning on coming? Are you going to come? Yeah. I know you're pregnant. Are you going to come to San Francisco with us?
Right.
And I was like, I keep in mind, I was like, I should say no. I decided I'm not going to. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to. And I was like, yay. Like my inside, I was like, this is it.
Oh, you made the decision.
It just felt like I couldn't not. Like, and my heart was like, yay. My head was like, you're dumb.
Oh.
How are you going to do this? My head was like, you don't have anyone to watch your kid. Who's going to watch your kids? I was like, I'll figure it out. Oh, boy. And I'm pregnant. And like, anyway. So yeah, that was crazy and a rush. And Evan was like, okay, I'm on board. Whatever you decide, like if this gets you done sooner, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Because he was supportive of me not going, because like the real reason I decided I wasn't going to go back is I was like, I don't want to feel like I missed out on these tiny baby years. It's my favorite.
Yeah, I agree.
And at the end of
Really
my
special.
life, am I going to wish that I had suffered through school, or am I going to wish that I'd held my little baby in my arms? And I was like, that's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of went back to like what I said earlier. Like
Yeah.
it made those moments so rich. Like I do feel like I missed out, but you would anyway. Like if you want to be a stay-at-home mom, obviously you catch everything.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of not my personality. Anyway, so I start the semester and I'm looking at sites.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wanted to do it in Utah because I wanted to see the site physically, and just going to a different state while I was pregnant was like, which is funny because we went to San Francisco. Anyway, I was like, I want to be able to see it often. And so I was like, okay, let's choose a spot in Utah. Plus, if I did it outside of Utah, like the need for a more welcoming spiritual temple is like not as much as it like
The demographics are different.
Yes, the demographics are different. And I wanted to serve specifically the people here in Utah who miss the temple but don't want to be associated with the church anymore.
Yeah.
So that was really niche and important to me. So I was looking at sites in Provo. I was looking at sites up Provo Canyon, like beautiful views, like somewhere accessible to people's houses.
Right.
I also really wanted it to be a sanctuary in the winter. The year before, it was December, and I was thinking, I'm stuck in my house. I just wish I could go see a plant. I want to see a green thing. I need it.
Right.
So that was part of the conservatory idea that I had, and it being warm and sacred. Anyway, so I was looking at sites, and I was like, okay, natural, spiritual pools, Utah. And I was like, oh yeah, like hot springs and stuff are all over Utah. And I was looking at different sites, and I was like, oh, that's kind of ugly. And I just came across this article that was like, Britain's bathhouse, 1929 or whatever. And I was like, what? I had no idea that we ever had a bathhouse in this state at all.
Yeah, I didn't know about it until you brought it up as well.
Yeah. And so, like, you know, the next week we're in class, and Paul's like, so has everyone decided? And I was like, well, I'm going in between like this site because I wanted to do like a wooden conservatory church, like up Provo Canyon. Or I was going to do the bathhouse. And it's a restoration. The building existed. And then Paul was like,
do
that. Do that.
Oh.
I don't know if you remember hearing him in class, but he was like, because I was saying like, oh, I might do this site, but I'm also like really drawn to this. You know, it would be a historic preservation. And he was like looking at me. I'm like, okay, so I guess I'm doing that one. He's like, okay. Yes.
I can visualize him now.
Yeah. And so, but I was hesitant with that because I'm like, how do I get that conservatory in there? And then I remembered like previously when I talked to Brandon, he had brought up bathhouses as like a sacred space for all people.
Yeah.
And how anciently that's how you cleanse yourself, you cleanse your soul, you're with your community. It was, it's very spiritual. And I was like, wait, this is so perfect. Like it's already could be the sacred space. And it's using the natural waters too. And it's a beautiful building. And a good environment for plants. And it just ticked off all the boxes except that it's in a horrible location.
Yes.
Horrible.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, this won't do. It's across from an oil refinery.
Right.
You can't be very like spiritual with that blowing in your face, right? So it's like, okay, I guess I have to turn this into an urban design project too.
Oh, yeah.
And Paul was like, yes.
He ate that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
So I was like, anything to like get the approval of Paul, sure. No, actually, I really love urban design, walkability. It's a great area. So I was like, ooh, get my grubby little hands all over it.
Yeah.
And again, when we learn about ourselves, my eyes are always bigger than my stomach since I was a little kid. And I do the same things with my projects and ideals. So I was like, okay, it's a historic preservation. Okay, it's a conservatory. It's a temple. It's also a community center. It's also going to be a garden to serve the like native tribes in the area because that's their land historically.
Okay.
It's also going to be an urban project, and I'm going to get rid of a 50-year-old oil refinery when the zones don't allow it.
Yeah.
I'm just
fix all the problems
crazy.
Along with one project.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Do it all.
Yes.
And it was super ambitious, and it just felt like everything was falling together perfectly to what exactly I wanted. And I just felt like my soul needed this place. And if it actually happens, other people really need this place. And so I felt a lot of like community drive to it. And then I met the director of Warm Springs, Sylvia Nibley.
Okay.
And talked with her. And I was like, oh, so cool. Like, your name's Sylvia. That's what we're going to, that's going to be the middle name of our soon to come baby. And she's like, oh, so
wow.
cool. And her birthday is actually the 28th of September, which is Rhea's birthday.
Wow.
Anyway, she's just this pleasant woman. And so she was my, what do we have?
She was
mentor.
Yeah.
She wasn't an architect, but she manages businesses, and she's at the head of this organization to preserve the Warm Springs bathhouse.
Okay.
And so I talked with her and her visions for it, and it just felt like we were meant to meet, and like the community could really use a revitalization in that area. So I felt like I was doing something good. The only sad thing is now it's like it's not going to happen.
Right.
And
all
so
that work.
all these
that's
dreams, like, so if I can get on the Salt Lake like City Planning Council somehow further in my life,
yeah,
that would be like top tier, like to hopefully happen. I mean, I'm crazy, but you got to be crazy to make stuff happen that nobody else thinks of doing, right? But I was also taking an urban design course at the time, and so it just felt like everything around me was buoying me up to get it exactly where it ended. And
like you'd have the skills you would need by the time that you finished that project.
Yeah. And I'm a little disappointed in some of my drawing skills, but and like some of the execution, but for the most part, like 80%, I'm like, I love this so much.
Yeah.
The only thing that makes me sick is still seeing it be an oil refinery.
Right.
Because you see what it could be.
Yeah.
And it's just sad now.
Well, you've done a lot of work to potentially making that happen one day and motivating.
Yeah.
A lot of people came to the jury that were actually working on that building at the time.
Yeah.
And I feel like they were also inspired by your work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was definitely blown away that you combined so many things into your project that did solve a lot of problems with the community,
Mm-hmm.
and not just a building that exists for its purpose. Being a building in an urban plan makes the project way more difficult.
Yeah.
And also, in my mind, like an expression of what you want to do with your career.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering how you plan on, in your career, kind of implementing urban design.
Well, it starts with good practical architecture. So anytime, like even if it's just a home, because that's like at the core of like why architecture is. I love making people's homes, like the mushroom house. That's what I want. Anyway, so it starts with the house. And when you have the house and you have the people, then you have the community, then you need the buildings to support the community. And so that starts with practical architecture that fits within its context. And so if I'm just going to be an architect, then I can involve myself with developers or people who have that same vision. And I can take myself to jobs or cities that align with that. Yeah. And so I'm always interested in looking at when cities are striving for walkability. And I like to, get my grubby little hands, and I would really like to be on an urban planning committee at some point if I can get the proper education. I don't know if they'd let me on as a training architect because technically I'm not yet. I don't know what to call us right now. We're graduated bachelors of architecture students, but we're not architects yet because we're not licensed.
Right, we're in limbo.
Yeah, so like what do we call ourselves?
Digital technicians, basically.
Working professional? I don't know.
Yeah. Learning architects.
But at some point I would love to serve like in local municipalities. I believe in Orem. Yeah. Mike Hathorn does not. He's an urban design professor, or was last year, and he works with Larry H. Miller. He's so brilliant. He's way more realistic and practical than I am, so he thinks I'm crazy. I believe in Orem. So if eventually at some point I could, I don't know, help them preserve their character, like Orem's like Sarah community.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to design some Art Deco stuff for Orem. Turn of the century, like, because the Sarah Theater is like it has so much personality, and it's like all alone. Right. And people love going to the Sarah Park and the Sarah Pool. Yeah. And there's talk of a children's museum coming to Orem or like Utah County. And I'm like, if we could design that one building to be connected to the Sarah Theater, then we could start to get a feel for like what Orem is.
Yeah. Create a city center around
Yes.
what should be the city center.
Yeah. So just anywhere I am, I'm always thinking about like, what are the unique things to this place and how can either one building or more walkability make people feel pride in where they're living? That's really what I want. So I want people to feel pride in where they are, to recognize where they are, like, oh, this is a place.
Mhm.
But also another huge part of how I want to contribute is like a lot of this urban, what do they call it? New urbanism
Yeah.
is, my part in it is the pretty architecture, but there's more to it in the sense that it's safer because it's walkable.
Yeah.
And I really, really, really believe in the safety of walkability.
Right.
I just am tired of people being killed by cars.
Right.
It's horrible.
It is.
And we structure our whole lives around a car and
Mhm.
traveling, and it
Yeah.
makes me sick.
And it opens your eyes when you see a place that doesn't do that.
Yes. And it's got good architecture, it's got community, and the people have their sense of place. So it's like, why aren't we doing this everywhere? And I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So.
I see that as your kind of mission in life,
Yeah.
to rock the boat of architecture,
Mhm.
is to make architects more aware of the urban design of their projects, as well as maybe improving aura.
Yeah, there's a role we play. Yeah.
So if there was one question in closing that you'd ask the next guest, what would it be?
It would be, if you were not going to be an architect, what career would you choose and why?
Awesome.
That would be my question.
Thank you so much for joining this podcast.
Yeah.
This has been the studio session with Brytin Ayers, and we hope you will check back with us next time. And we encourage you to look at the resources you have around you and be inspired by Brighton here. And you can do it even if you're a mother, and even if you're pregnant during your second to last semester.
3 times.
And I hope that you feel just as inspired as I do, and go out and build something beautiful.